I can see live up there.
Good. That's the start. All right, I won't click stop again. Let's turn me around. There's everybody. Right.
Yeah.
Well, welcome everybody. I guess it's been a busy day.
Mm.
Yeah. Session 3, Get More from Your Bible. We're looking at interpretation today. Okay. It's a controversial topic amongst many Christians. How much, whether you should interpret the Bible. Okay. Difficult area. So I'm going to explore some of those issues. I want to cover a little bit of ground we didn't do last time first, which I meant to, but just we spent so much time on other things, and that is writing styles in the Bible. Okay. I think you noticed, man, in first session, different ways the text was set out. In one of the Bibles you were looking at, I think you found that there's the narratives, like that sort of thing. Particularly if you look at the middle of the Bible. So remember we did this little trick where you divide the Bible in half. You end up.
At least you should do this one. Did you read it?
Psalms.
Yeah, Psalms, and you can see the text is laid out in the Psalms very differently to the way it is if you go here. Okay. All right. So basically, there's two basic different styles in the Bible. There's the narrative, which is just story. Okay, they're writing something, that's a story of what's happening, and account of something. And then you've got poetry. Okay, and the poetry is really easy to tell because of the way the lines are laid out. It's not laid out like a story, like an English poem or an English narrative would be laid out. But within each of those different groups, those two groups, there's different types of narrative, for example. So if you go to the narrative type, where it's just justified and it's not set out line by line, then you've got histories. So if you were to look at a book like First or Second Kings, you would find that what you've got there is history, and it's there to tell a historical story. Then there's storytelling. So someone is telling a story. So the typical ones are the parables. You go to the Gospels, to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Jesus told a lot of parables. So he's storytelling. Okay, it's just another type of narrative. It's not meant to be true. It's not meant to be historical. It's a story to illustrate a point.
Like the Good Samaritan?
Like the Good Samaritan. Yeah, absolutely. That's a parable. It's a story. It's intended to talk about something, but it's not intended to be historical. So no one claims the Good Samaritan actually existed. Even
fundamentalist Christians.
That's correct, because they recognise it's a story that Jesus told to make a point. Okay. Then there's, I've called it fantasy. It's apocalyptic literature is the proper title. But if you went to the very, very, very last book of the Bible, to the book of Revelation, you will find fantastic stories there and writing. Now, that's where people start to say, oh, it's going to be historical, or no, it's not. So it's controversial, whether it's intended to be a historical record or a prediction of something that's actually going to happen, or whether it's illustrative of something.
Revelation the last, but
the very, very, very last. So work from the back. There you go. You've got it. Okay. So that's another type of narrative. Another one is what's called a covenant, or which is really a contract. So some of the writing you find, the narrative story, is actually set out like a contract in the ancient world. Okay, so it's a legal agreement between two parties. Okay, so you get that sort of narrative
What's
writing
an
in the
example of
Bible
that?
as well. If you want to go find one, Joshua, the book of Joshua, Joshua chapter 24. So there's Joshua. It's about, I don't know, a sixth of the way through. Okay, and then chapter 24, which is right at the very end. Well done. Joshua, and chapter 24. So go through and find chapter 24. It's the last chapter of that book. And in my Bible, it's titled The Covenant at Shechem. Okay. Now, if you go to a commentary on that chapter, they'll tell you how it's laid out like a contract, an ancient world contract. So there's things like who are the parties to the agreement, what's the history to the agreement, what each party agrees to do, what are the stipulations and the laws that happen if someone decides to break what they've promised to do. All those sorts of things are found in a chapter like that. Okay, so what they've done is biblical scholars have they've taken that chapter and they've compared it to non-religious literature they found from the ancient world. So you can imagine archaeologists go into a ruin, into a site, and they find records of various things, transactions and paperwork that they found, and they compare it and they see that there's a lot of common ground between a chapter like this and contracts in the ancient world. All right. So if you want to go digging into that more deeply, you can go to commentaries, which will sort of lay it all out for you. So there's another type of narrative. Then we go to the poetry. There are straight poems. Okay. So if we go to the middle of your Bible again, find Psalms. Now, Psalms is not straight poetry, just so you know. But if you go to the book just before, which is the book of Job, there it is. Yeah, you will find poetry. Okay, and there's little bits of story in there as well, but it's basically poetry. So that's one type of poetry, just straight poems. If you go back to the Psalms, right in the middle, these are not just straight poems, these are actually intended as songs. Okay, so the Jews would set these to music and they would sing them at various times. So they might sing them on journeys up to Jerusalem when you're going to a religious feast or something or other, okay? Or they might sing them in worship, or they might sing them sort of in everyday life. So occasionally, when you look at the heading of a psalm, you'll see it's set to the tune of, for example, will appear sometimes. So if you look there, that says a song of ascents. Let's say, not a song of ascents of Solomon. So that's just telling you that Solomon allegedly wrote it.
Are these some in church?
They can be. Or there could be some on a pilgrimage. There could be some just while you're working, just as a way of reminding yourself about religious teaching.
But right now, there's some in churches still, like currently?
Often they are, not usually in this form. These days, like a lot of Christian songwriters will take a psalm and they'll like maybe use a verse or something or other from one of the psalms and create a song around it.
Yeah.
You won't so often get people singing through the whole psalm. If you go to churches that use chanting, they may chant through a psalm. Okay, and so it's used in that way. Another form of poetry you get is what's called oracles. Now, if you go past Psalms and go and I found the book of Isaiah. Okay. A little bit further, keep going further on, past Ecclesiastes, past Song of Solomon. Stick your finger in that one because you need to go back there. Isaiah, there you go. Now, Isaiah, these are largely oracles, and oracles are a particular type of poetry. They are prophecy. Okay, and they're written in poetic form. All right, and then go back to Song of Solomon's, Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon. It's called different titles. And Solomon was a king, the third king of Israel. And these are love songs and love poems in this book. Okay, sometimes they're quite explicit. Okay, so different types of poetry and different types of narrative you get within the Bible. Okay. Any questions on any of that?
What was the purpose of the Songs of Solomon? Love songs, did you say?
Love songs. What's the purpose of it? Well, I mean, it's written to Solomon's wife. So, from a New Church perspective, we'd look at this and we'd say, well, this is probably indicative of God's love for us, the Lord's love for the church. There's something about that in there. Okay.
That's an interpretation.
That's an interpretation. Yeah. Okay.
Do you know that word Swedenborg, does he say that? I'm not sure.
I don't know of Swedenborg saying that. I'd have to go look. But given what I know about Swedenborg's understanding of the word, that's what jumps to mind straight away for me. Okay. So that's just the writing styles in the Bible, and so I've just outlined 8. Just to be aware of. Okay. Let's have a look at our handout. I'm going to get you to jump past the first page. You don't really need that, and I'm only loosely following that session outline. I'm going to get you to go to second page, which is headed "What is interpretation?" Brad, have you got the handout, mate?
Yep, I've got it.
Fabulous, very good. So, just want to understand what we mean by the word interpretation. What's an everyday sort of a definition of interpretation? To interpret.
Explain.
To explain. Okay. We use interpret in terms of what most often?
Translation.
Translation, that's right. So someone speaks in one language and it's interpreted to another. Why is it interpreted?
It's just not understood.
So we understand it, because we don't understand the original language, or not everybody will. So this is what the process of interpretation is.
But interpret, I mean, to interpret in another language is more translate. Interpret is to bring more meaning to it.
Yeah, but to translate, to even translate French, you need to interpret the sentence you're doing and swap the meanings around, like the words around. So otherwise, we'll be saying car blue, not blue car.
That's really quite an interesting insight, isn't it? You actually need to understand the language you're talking in, or the original language, and not only just translate it, but actually translate it in a way that makes sense to the person who's hearing the translation. That's really quite a useful thing to realise. But we interpret a lot of things, not just language. We interpret body language. Right? We interpret tone of voice. Yeah, facial expression. There's all sorts of things we interpret in order to make sense of just someone else's communication to us. Yeah. So be aware, interpretation is just a part of everyday life. It's not some mystical, magical thing that we should think, we shouldn't do it all. It's just, we have to interpret in order to be able to understand something. Now, as far as the Bible goes, one of the things we've got to face is that the Bible is written for people when?
Thousands of years ago.
Sorry, mate?
No, I was just saying
What was that?
thousands of years ago it was written. So how we interpret now will be different to how they lived back then.
Yeah, that's right. It's written for people thousands of years ago. It's written for people in another culture. Okay, so the world they surround themselves with is very, very different from the world we surround ourselves with. Okay, even down to I remember Pam and I went to Turkey when it'd be 21 years ago or something. Or we went to Turkey, and we went on this sailing holiday. But it made me realize there's a little passage in Matthew's Gospel where Jesus talks about, he says, the Lord makes the sun to shine upon the righteous and the unrighteous, and the rain to shine upon the righteous and the unrighteous.
I just read that.
Did you? Oh, there you go. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Having grown up and lived in England for much of my life, I'd always interpreted that passage to mean the Lord sends both good and bad on the righteous and the unrighteous. The the sun being the good and the rain being the bad. That was my perception of it. Okay, because I didn't enjoy rain.
Did you have too much of it?
Yeah, that's right. But going to the Turkey, which is very, very close to the Holy Land, makes you realise that rain is actually not that at all. It's a great blessing. Because, like here, the land is very dry, and they depend on the rains coming at a specific point in time in the year for the crops to grow. And if it doesn't, then they're in trouble. So you can see how my understanding, growing up in England, of what rain meant, and the implication of rain is very different from the implication of rain for the person reading the Bible in its original culture.
Mm.
Yes. It's about
But
context.
doesn't it mean the same thing?
What?
Because if rain is maybe good in Turkish, then the sun is Turkish like that. So it's still good and bad.
Here's the thing: God doesn't send anything bad on people. You see?
Mm.
That's it. So, but you can. That aside, you can see that we can run into all sorts of problems reading the Bible because we read it from our context. We impose our context upon it, and therefore we read it in a particular way where actually it shouldn't be read that way at all.
Luce, what was his experience in Turkey?
The fact that it was flipped to England, to his experience in England.
Yeah, sure. You can colour in that.
So let's move on. So when we'll go down to this next section, I've got a couple of examples of when the Bible obviously needs interpretation. So the first one I've quoted is Isaiah chapter 11. Okay, and this is prophecies which have never come true. Right. So Isaiah chapter 11, a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse, from his roots a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of power, the Spirit of knowledge and of the fear of the Lord. It's this next bit. The wolf will lie with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, the calf and the lion and the yearling together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear, their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the hole of the cobra, and the young child put his hand into the viper's nest. Okay.
Jehovah's Witnesses have that all over their leaflets that they hand out.
That particular one.
They have all that with the kids and the lions.
Oh,
and
the
lamb.
pictures they do.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right, they do. So the Jehovah's Witnesses actually believe that will occur literally. That at the end of the world, the re-establishment of a new creation, a new earth, then there'll be no more predators. Just won't happen.
So they're obviously very literalist.
vegetarian.
Very, very literalist.
You know,
Yeah.
literal-
Although having
literal
said
meat.
that, having had discussions with Jehovah's Witnesses, they still have their own translations as well.
Yeah.
They would really go hard at us
Yeah.
in Birmingham because we were you know in the ministry, so
Oh yeah.
they would come often.
We were prime targets because we were right next to the church too. So.
Yeah.
The new church.
But any church, I mean, in Jehovah's Witnesses, any church, then they don't just not interested in you being involved in any other church.
So I convert you. Yeah.
So a prophecy. Now, the thing about that prophecy is it's related by many Christians to refer to the coming of Jesus. Okay. So Jesus, who lived 2,000 years ago, when Jesus lived, this did not happen. You see? So we need to come to some understanding of that passage beyond the literal. Okay. Because if that's related to Jesus, as many Christians believe it is, this business of the end of predation just didn't happen. Okay, let's go to the next one.
And is unlikely to, and wouldn't serve any purpose.
Yeah.
Because the whole digestive system of a leopard is, or the lion is, they can't eat straw.
Yeah.
It's not going to do it. It's not going to survive. It'll be a very sick lion.
So there you go. Yeah, that's one example. So here's another general category, and this word is a mouthful. Anthropomorphisms. Now it means giving God human features. Okay, so I've quoted hands, face, and eyes. Its companion is an anthropopathism, which is giving God human emotions such as anger, or jealousy, or human love, those sorts of ideas. So these are, I just quoted the anthropomorphisms. The hand of God, O sovereign Lord, you have begun to show to your servant your greatness and your strong hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do the deeds and mighty works you do? And then from Psalm 31, into your hands I commit my spirit. Redeem me, O Lord, the God of truth. Then there's the face of God. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. Another one from the Psalms there. The eyes of God. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord. They forgot the Lord their God and served the Baals and the Asherahs. And then there's another one. Give ear, O Lord, and hear. Give ear. Didn't mention ear, but there it is. Give ear, O Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, O Lord, and see. Listen to all the words Sennacherib has sent to insult the living God. So there's examples of God being described as having a hand, having a face, and having eyes. What's it mean?
Well, a hand could be support. Turning his face. I always like that one, to shine upon you. I mean, I don't see a face. Light, warmth, energy, love, attention. Yeah.
Eyes. The eyes of the Lord.
To guide you.
Knowingness.
Sorry, what's that, Liz?
To guide you.
To guide. Yep. So truth. Yep. So what we have to realize, I'm not sure whether I mentioned this before, the Hebrew language, which is what the Old Testament is written in, is a concrete language. Have I said that before?
Not this time.
Within the context of this group?
Yeah.
I have? Yeah. So concrete means that it deals with things, okay? Things that I can touch and see. Okay. So in Hebrew, for example, there's no word for the mind because you cannot touch or see a mind. There's no word for love. There's no word for fear or any emotion. Okay. What they do is they describe those things in terms of things you can see. So you can see a hand. Okay. So when we attribute a hand to God, it's talking about a quality that God has, which we do with our hands. Okay. So you were saying support, yeah. Power. Okay. When I do anything, I generally do it with my hand. It's my ability to do the work. to have an effect on another person is the hand of God. Okay. The face of God is actually God's presence. Okay, presence, to be present with someone is not, again, it's not a word you can see or touch or feel. So they use the face of God to represent or to mean His presence.
So if I was to turn around and face that way, I wouldn't be present with you.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yes, and I mean we get a sense of that, because saying. No, talking to people face to face. We actually expect eye contact.
So that's why I was checking with Elise, because she's not fully present, but obviously she is, because she answered our question.
Yeah.
But she could be more engaged.
So
She's doing all right.
So you see,
But that was where it's coming from.
face is presence. That's right. Eyes are, well, I think truth was said, the ability to see, the ability to make judgments about certain things and understand the character or nature of something. You see, that's the eyes. Foresight is often referred to here as well. The Lord's ability to see what is going to happen. Okay, these are the eyes of God. So wherever God is said to have something that is really a human thing, it's explaining an aspect of God. Okay, not to say that God actually has a physical hand in the same way that I have a physical hand. Okay, and then contradictions in the Bible, of which there are plenty. I've quoted a few here. So, war or peace is the first one. I've got two different quotes. From Joel, first of all, proclaim this among the nations, prepare for war, rouse the warriors. Let all the fighting men draw near and attack. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weaklings say, I am strong. Come quickly, all you nations from every side, and assemble there. Bring down your warriors, O Lord. And then in Micah, it says, he will judge between many peoples and will settle disputes for strong nations far and wide. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. There's the opposite occurring there. See? So one is swords into pruning, plowshares to swords and pruning hooks to spears, and the other one is swords to plowshares and spears to pruning hooks. So which is it?
It's hard.
It's hard to plows. Is that happened afterwards?
Maybe. Go on, Brad, you're going to say something, mate?
I was just going to say it's hard to answer which one it is when we don't know the full of those stories, because we've got a paragraph of each one without knowing the full perspective of what was happening in those stories.
Yeah, absolutely. You caught me out there. You have to read it in the context, as you said earlier. You have to, so you take that and you say, okay, Joel said that and Micah said this, but you've got to then go back and probably read the entire chapter, probably understand the whole book in the context in which the book was written, to get a real sense of what is actually being said there. Okay, it's very easy to do exactly what I've just done and pull two things out and say, well, that's contradictory, but what's actually going on? What is the context? Are they at different points in history? I think you were saying that sort of idea. You have to look at the Bible in that way.
But it's interesting how we look to like, I don't understand the Quran very well, but Muslims saying taking bits like that out of the Quran and saying that justifies war. So if you take things literally, so here we have in our Bible saying take your plows and turn them into weapons.
Yeah.
And the God I know is not going to get into that.
Yeah.
Detail. That's a bunch of people pleading for victory over their foe, and then you've got the Germans praying the same God, and everybody's God's up there going on. I mean, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
Yeah. So we'll move on now to, does God change his mind? And again, I've got a couple here. God is not man that he should lie, nor the Son of Man that he should change his mind. Does he speak and then not act? Does he promise and not fulfill? That's from Numbers. Then Malachi, I the Lord do not change. Okay, same sort of idea. So you, O descendants of Jacob, are not destroyed. And then the last one from Jeremiah, perhaps they will listen and each will turn from his evil way. Then I will relent and not bring on them the disaster I was planning because of the evil they had done. So that relent is an idea of changing mind. So does he or doesn't he? Again, it's the same thing. You've got to look at the context in which each of those passages occurs to get a real sense of what's actually being said there. Okay. Any questions? No? Oh, good. All right. Flip over. Doctrine of Sacred Scripture. I've quoted a massive section here, several paragraphs from a little book by Emanuel Swedenborg, Doctrine of Sacred Scripture, where he's talking about the Bible. I'm not going to read through this. This really is for you to explore later on. But just to mention, what he's saying here is that we all interpret. We all interpret the word, whether we believe we are interpreting it or not. And fundamental to our understanding of the word, we must understand that we are interpreting it. Okay, we must acknowledge that, or else we're going to go nowhere. Okay, we're going to end up going from one passage to another, stitching stuff together, thinking it's actually what the word says, and getting it completely wrong. So we must understand that we are interpreting the word.
Because you just see all these contradictions like that if you're not interpreting.
Yeah, that's right. And you could take the thing about the contradictions, right? Let's just flip back to them. The war or peace thing. Okay. Together, those contradictions, you can say, okay, there's something going on here. This says one thing and that says another. There must be some middle ground, or there must be a way of interpreting these two. But imagine you were to take all the passages that talked about war and stitched all them together. You would end up with a warrior God, wouldn't you? You see? Or imagine you took all the passages that talked about peace. You would end up with that. Okay, so you've got to understand that there's both of those within the word, and whatever you do must take both into account. You can't just go down one path, because that's going to lead you the wrong way. You see? But if you don't understand that you're interpreting the word, then it's very easy to go down those wrong paths. You've got to get a holistic, balanced sense of the word. And you've got to understand that we're all interpreting every moment of our lives, and when we come to the Bible, we are no different.
It's saying, therefore, the doctrine must be taken from a sense of the letter.
Yeah.
Getting a sense of what it's saying, not just the actual words. Is that right?
Yeah. It's what Swedenborg is saying here. He's actually talking about the spiritual sense. And he's saying that if you start dealing with the spiritual internal sense of the word, it's very easy to get carried away. So you must ground it in the literal text. It must be grounded in the literal somehow. Otherwise, you can go on all sorts of flights of fancy in every sort of direction that your imagination takes you. So don't just go for the spiritual sense. It must be grounded in the literal. One of the things he also says is it's self-evident that we interpret the word just by virtue of the fact that there are so many different churches in the world who all claim that their interpretation is what the word says. All right? If there was no interpretation of the word, if the word just said what the word said and it was plainly evident to everybody, there would only be one church. Does that make sense?
It says that here then.
Yeah. Okay. So every church has its own bent, its own particular way of understanding the word, because they're all interpreting it in one way or another. Just some of them are not acknowledging that they're interpreting. So we must understand, first and foremost, we interpret the word, and then we must do what we can to see that our interpretation is as close to accurate as we can possibly get. Okay? So I'm not going to read all of that. It's just there for you to have a look at. Let's have a look at the passage. So John chapter 2 verses 1 to 11. So if we go to our Bibles actually and open it up at the Gospel of John. So the Gospels are in the New Testament. So if you remember what we did last time, we took our Bible, we got halfway, and then we got three-quarters of the way, got us to Matthew's Gospel. It's the beginning of the New Testament. And then it's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We want the fourth book. Those are the first four: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We go to John's Gospel. If you go to Acts and Romans, then you've gone too far. And then we're going to find chapter 2. Everybody got it? Chapter 2. Yeah, there you go, down there. So I'm going to read the first 11 verses, okay, and follow along. Now, if you've got different translations, it's going to be a little bit interesting to follow. So you've got, what's yours there? Translation you're? New King James. You're the same as me, so it should be pretty much the same. Jason, what's your translation? You've got the English Standard Version and today's New International Version. Anne's got New International, I know. Elise, you've got the oldest one, the King James. Brad, what's your Bible, mate?
The NIV.
Sorry, I missed that. Is that
NIV, I think.
Yeah.
NIV?
NRSV.
Oh, New Revised Standard Version. Okay. So, John chapter 2, verses 1, and I'll read through to 11. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now, both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of the purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast," and they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom. And he said to him, "Every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then that which is inferior. But you have kept the good wine until now." This beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him.
There's a much different translation.
It's very different, is it?
Yes.
What did you know? Did you notice anything in particular?
Well, when he went on the third day, it was "and the third day." And there was a lot of "the" and "saith."
Oh yes, Seth. Okay, that's old-fashioned English for says or
Yeah,
said. Yeah.
And then "unto" and "bear" when they took it. And Yeah, and when you said signs, here it is said miracles.
Okay. One thing I note from what you said, Elise, you said the word "and" at the beginning.
Mhm.
Does anybody else have the word "and" at the beginning of that chapter?
No, this is on the third
On
day.
the third day, you'll have the same as me.
Mm.
Pam?
Mm.
No.
Oh.
The word "and" will be there in the Greek. Okay. So in most of our translations, that word has just been completely missed out. Okay. Now, why have they done that?
It's not
Doesn't make
necessary.
sense.
It's not modern approach to start a sentence with "and."
Yeah, that's right. And yet the Bible is peppered with "and." "And" is the most common word in the Bible. Okay? Because the way they tell the story in particular is "and this, and that, and this," and it just keeps going. String and string after another of "ands." Okay? So in this case, they have omitted it because it's a new story, it's a new chapter. It begins a new thing. So they haven't bothered putting the
And it
"and."
doesn't really detract from it.
Not our understanding of that.
No.
But then if you try and dig deeper, so if we talk about Swedenborg's work with, the accessing the spiritual meaning, that "and" is incredibly important because it connects everything together, you see.
In what way would it be
The
important
flow.
here?
Well, it connects it with the previous verse, the previous chapter, as much as anything. Okay. One thing to bear in mind about your Bibles, and this is true pretty much all the way through, the original text of the Bible did not have chapter and verse. Okay. None of the books had chapter
It was
and
just
verse.
letters by people.
It's just, it kept going. In fact, I don't know, has anybody heard of the Bible Code? The Bible Code? Pam, do you remember the Bible Code? It was about 15, 20 years ago, the Bible Code, the idea was very popular. Brad, do you know of it, mate?
I've heard of it, but know nothing of it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting theory. The theory was that, see, the original is going to the Old Testament, the Hebrew, the way the Bible was presented was not even, they didn't even divide up the words. So all it was a string of letters, you see. Now the Bible Code, the theory of the Bible Code was you had this whole string of letters, and if you put it together in a certain order, it would, and you go like a word search, like a word search puzzle, and you would get things like a word would cross a name or something or other, and the Bible Code was suggesting that where the word and a name crossed, it was making a prediction about some historical event. So, for example, they might find the name Netanyahu being one of the prime ministers of Israel. Okay, and something would cross his name, like so, they might find assassination or something or other, you see, and the combination of those two names was a prediction that Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be assassinated. See, so that was the Bible Code. Now, so as I say, it didn't have the chapters, it didn't have the verses, it didn't have even the words divided up. There were no spaces between
Why
the
would it
words.
do that?
Sorry.
What would be the meaning? How could you read it?
How could you read what?
Just letters
No
everywhere
spaces.
without
Oh well,
spaces.
I mean, it's I've
It's
heard.
pretty easy, Poppy. How do you do a word search? You're when learning to read, your brain, when you see random letters, your brain immediately wants to connect them up.
It's pretty slow going.
Oh, it is slow going. I mean, they use computers to do the analysis of this. You see, but this guy came up with this amazing theory that if you did this to the Bible, so you might take, and it would vary in different places. If you took 20 letters and 20 letters and 20 letters and 20 letters, but then in another place you might do 30 or 25. They've used computers, you see, to analyze these letters in this particular string.
That's pretty obsessive.
It's quite quite fantastic what they did, but whether there's any truth to it is another matter entirely. So
Exactly.
yeah.
I'm just saying, but you brought up this whole point, but it was all strung in. And I'd like to know, Larissa's got her idea, Elise, but why would they write like that? How could that be meaningful to people? Because you'd have to be figuring out where the words ended all the time.
Yes, you would. That's right.
And why would they do that?
Because you needed to read it.
No, why would
Fine.
they string them together in the first place?
Why would they have written it like that?
That's
You're
just-
saying the
that's
Old
just-
Testament was this, that, and that's the way
That's
they wrote.
the way it was written. There were no spaces between the words. Yeah, they didn't put spaces between the words. You had to read the space in.
Is that the way people wrote letters to each other too? Is that just the way people
I
wrote?
think so. I think it may well have been.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, they didn't put spaces between the words, so you just end up with a long string of letters. Okay, so it certainly wasn't divided up into chapters and verses. So the one exception to that, anybody guess this, the book that's the exception to that?
Song of Solomon.
That's possibly Psalms is the one that strikes my mind. Song of Solomon is probably true as well, because the Psalms is actually a compilation of songs by different people. So each one had a beginning and had an end. You see, so that's the exception. But even there, you go into the book of Psalms, and they reckon that some Psalms, what we have as two Psalms, were actually one Psalm originally. You see, so there's 150 Psalms apparently in the book of Psalms, but actually some of them are part A and part B of the same Psalm. You see, and we lose that. We don't realise that because they've been divided up in a number of verses. So going back to John, realise that the chapter number and the verse numbers are not there. The Gospel of John flows from beginning to end without any pause or stop. See?
So you saying there was no punctuation whatsoever? There was
No,
no
certainly
full
no
step,
punctuation.
stops, no sentence. It's just one long sentence.
Yes. Yeah. And certainly not divided up into neat little stories. So the whole thing is a flow. It flows through. It doesn't. Yeah, we have the little divisions, especially with these little headings. We get that. Okay, there's the beginning of one story, and there's where it ends. But that doesn't apply. And the and is there in the language to actually just keep joining it all together. It just flows straight through. Okay. Anything else to notice about about this story, this chapter?
I always thought it was a bit pointless. As a first miracle, like Jesus making alcohol, really? No,
Yeah, fair enough.
And he
So-
said to his mother, "My time is not yet come," but he did it anyway.
Yeah,
Did a miracle.
Yeah. So why did he do it?
because he
Prove it.
could.
Prove a point. Or something
then-
get some notoriety.
And then the other thing is,
Because his mother asked him to.
why is it in the Bible? No.
Yeah.
If he's just making alcohol because they didn't stock up properly for the party,
Right, so there's an interpretation.
you know,
hopefully,
why is it in the Bible? Why is it significant? You see. So
And you're turning something good into something good for different circumstances. I mean, they're both good, although too much wine's a bit toxic. As I learned recently.
yeah.
Yeah.
But then
But I guess with what Kobe just said with the turning something good into something good, it's also another interpretation of what's good, like with the whole Son of Man thing.
yeah. So it's very different in our culture.
So does
to
Sweden
what we say.
talk about the miracles?
Yes.
What does he say about that one?
About this one.
Mm.
Well, so it's here because it's teaching us something.
I was to say something. How do so many churches like Methodists and that they be complete teetotalists? If Jesus himself made 100 gallons of wine, like I often wonder where they get that from.
Look, my granddad was in the Salvation Army and he was teetotal. And
But did it from a zealous? This is a Christian thing to do, and we as Christians don't do it. I mean,
yeah,
make it God. It's just kind of weird.
Well, I say it was my grandfather. He was absolutely dead against alcohol his entire
Yeah, and
life.
it's a good idea. But I mean, then to say God said so, well, hello,
Yeah.
he made it. So let's party on. And when everybody's had enough, let's do some more. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm just wondering where they all came from.
Yeah, sure.
We, you know,
Sure. Yeah. It's interpretation, isn't it? So there's something going on here with interpretation and how we see this.
we have to ask him, I guess.
Yeah.
Not yet time. You know, all the time for them.
Oh, I wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't ready. I'm not ready to use my magical powers, Mum. So I'll do something stupid.
Leave me alone. Don't bother me, Mom.
So I mean, the thing about this miracle.
We'd be slapped down by a few fundamentalists wondering what we're doing here, wouldn't they?
Yeah. So this is about transformation. Okay. The thing about water to wine is about transformation.
I thought
Okay. It's about taking, in Swedenborg's terminology, it's natural truth and turning it into spiritual truth. Okay, so you can go quite deep into what's being talked about here, but it's about transformation. Just bear in mind that John's Gospel is the only one that actually records this miracle. Okay, so John's got a particular purpose in mind for quoting this one. He could have quoted so many others, but yet he's quoted this one and said it's the first, claiming it's particularly significant, in the story that he is trying to tell about Jesus. Right. Anything else? Anybody notice?
Well, Mary has, the mother has a lot of belief in him. She just tells the servants to do whatever he says.
Yeah, she does, doesn't she? And
Why
yet
isn't she referred to as Mary?
what's she referred to as?
His mother.
His mother. And Jesus, in actual fact, says, "Woman,
Mm-hmm.
woman, what does your concern have to do with me?" Imagine talking to your mother like that.
He just probably threw sheets to the wind when he said that. Sounds like somebody that got a little too much wine or ever did.
So, yeah. She's not referred to by name. I'm not entirely sure I can tell you why.
Well, it does it clearly make sure you know which Mary it is. That may be the reason.
Well,
His
that's
mother.
true too, because there were a number of Marys. Yeah, that's right.
Mary Magdalene, right? And all that.
Yeah, so there were. a
Otherwise,
number
we'd never
of
know
Marys.
it was his
That's-
mum he was talking to. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I can say it shortens the story because he didn't want to waft on.
Okay, maybe. One thing I'll point out to you is the size of the water jars. Where is that? Verse
30
6.
gallons.
20 or 30.
20 or 30 gallons apiece, and that's what yours says?
Yeah, mine says 75 to 115 litres. It translates it as.
Oh, litres, there you go. Okay.
That's down the bottom.
Yeah,
It says that's how
Yeah.
much it was.
That's a pretty big tub.
Yeah,
Pretty big tub.
and there was 4 of them.
Now, that in itself is an interpretation. Okay. Bear in mind that the original language says two or three metrites. Okay, 2 or 3 metrites.
Goodness.
Now, we have no idea what a metrites is because we don't measure things in metrites. Okay.
Wow.
So,
Nobody knows what a metrites is.
oh yeah, we know what it is because we figure it's 20 to 30 gallons.
So how do we know that?
Archaeology, I
Yeah,
imagine.
probably saying this is one metrites.
Yeah. And you can look. There's all these measures within the Bible, and they're compared with one another. So we have we can look at those and get a reasonable idea.
So then what's the point?
So well, the point is that in itself is an interpretation of the original text to allow it to be understood by the modern reader.
Mm-hmm.
But when you then start talking about the significance of numbers, right? If you see numbers as significant, as Swedenborg does, then 20 or 30 is not it. Neither is the how many litres was it?
75 to 115.
See, we come up with completely different numbers. The 2 or 3 is different than all of those. You see, because we have other passages in the Bible, such as Jesus said, "Wherever 2 or 3 are gathered together, there I am in the midst of them." You see. Well, that's very different from 20 or 30 or 75 to 150 litres.
Completely missed the point.
You can.
Mm.
And the other thing I noticed is the fact that he didn't just make cheapy wine. He made pretty awesome,
Made the
like
best. yes.
aged
Yes.
for 100 years wine or whatever.
Yeah, it was the best.
Aged
The best.
well.
That's right.
So if you're going to transform in a good way.
Awesomely.
Yeah.
Mm.
In a good spirit.
We could get some of that out, you know. Got some good stuff.
Now let's just look at some of the images you've got here too. On the third day. Anybody know what else happened on the third day? Anywhere else in the Bible?
Resurrection.
The resurrection.
Oh,
Thank you, Brad. Yeah, yes. Certainly there will be a third day of the creation story, but I can't remember off the top of my head what it is.
Is there separation between
Light.
something?
Sound was first.
There's
What
light
earth
first. Then there's, I think, the division of the waters.
Deepak Chopra says sound first because he spoke.
Oh, okay.
That's his way to
He's talking about the third day.
But in terms of the
the
third day,
first thing God did was make a noise.
According to what?
Deepak Chopra was not Christian, by the way.
he's a sort of a spiritual new age sort of a guru.
Medical doctor
There's heaven and the earth.
in America.
Darkness is over the surface. Light was the second thing.
So, yeah,
Let there be a vault between the waters to separate water from water. Sorry.
that's the third, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, the separation between the heavens and the earth.
No, the waters.
Oh, the waters. Okay, yeah, the third. Yeah. And three is complete. Is a complete thing. Now we talk about the Trinity. Three, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is a three. Okay. But I think that the resurrections are very significant. On the third day, so we have that's a significant thing that happened there. What else can you find?
What's he doing? I think Brad's you got a noisy mouse there, Brad.
6. Yes. Thank you.
Sorry.
6. What about 6? In terms of something else that's significant in the Bible with 6.
Well, the creation of the world was finished in 6 days.
Absolutely, the creation of the world was done in 6 days, and God rested on the seventh. That's right. Yes. So 6 has to do possibly with work, spiritual work, and the seventh rest.
What are we doing here? What's 6 on here?
6.
The jar.
The 6 water pots.
Ah.
You see.
So there's work to be done on our transformation.
Yes.
Well, it was a success. Like on the 6th day, it's, the achievement is finished.
I would say it's the 7th where it's finished. That's the end of the process. And the 6 days prior to that is where the work is done. So yeah, you could kind of say there's a line in the middle between the 6th and 7th day where it's done. But yeah, 6 days of work and 7th, it's finished. 7 is a very, very significant number in Revelation. And there's another number, actually, 666.
Mm.
We know that? The number of the beast. You heard of that?
Oh, I've heard that it's the number of the devil.
Yeah. And it comes from Revelation. And it's because of this significance, the connection with the creation story. You see? So it's spiritual work over and over and over and over again. So
Ends up making you the devil.
sounds like life. Yeah. Sorry, Jason.
That the spiritual work over and over and over again makes 666 and makes you the devil.
Well, it's the devil.
Rest.
The devil is I suppose he's the catalyst for temptation. He's the catalyst for that work. He's the reason we have to work in a way. Okay, so it's the evil within is the reason that we have to work on our spiritual lives to get to the 7.
But you know, so is death and heaven 7?
Yes, heaven is 7.
So at least what we've been doing is looking at numbers in here, and Swedenborg has a lot of significance with numbers. Did you hear the bit about that? It's not 20 or 30 gallons. It was 2 or 3 metrites. So in the Hebrew, it's metrites, or with the Greek, metrites. Look back in the day, is a particular way of saying something. Just like feet, right? A foot is a measure, right?
Yeah.
It's just made up. Somebody says it was made up by some sort of kings.
In your Bible, Elise, verse 6 it is. You look at chapter 2, verse 6 in that John that we just read.
Yeah.
Right at the end, I think. It says, for me,
Containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece.
Firkins, there you go.
Yeah, that was one that I missed out when I was.
2 or 3 firkins, please. What does it say here?
So, so Elise has got a firkin as a measure in her Bible, her translation.
And I bet they've got the numbers right.
They've got the numbers right, but that's only because a metrites is approximately the same size as a firkin, whatever a firkin is.
Yeah, but it's good to know, like, in this interpretation of making it more modern and readable, they've lost meaning, is what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there'd be plenty of. Is it a very common? Is it? I know, particularly from a Swedenborgian point of view, the meaning of numbers and significance, as you can begin to see through this process, is important.
I think it's pretty common in other
Is it?
interpretations, numbers.
It's interesting.
Maybe not as much.
I read a book on the book of Revelation. So this commentator called John Walvoord, which I presume is a Dutch name. So he wrote this book on Revelation, and he made this comment that the numbers in Revelation are clearly allegorical or clearly symbolic. And then he said, but you should take them literally unless it's obvious that they're symbolic.
So 6 is obvious, but maybe not 2 and 3 are obvious.
Yeah. But so I would ask, what's obvious?
Yeah.
No. It's kind of a funny statement to make, to say that the numbers in Revelation are obviously symbolic, but then say, no, we actually take them literally, unless it sort of jumps off the page at you and says, I'm symbolic.
Maybe it's just about you personally. It's obvious to you.
Yeah, that then becomes very, very subjective, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very, very subjective.
Instead of looking for patterns and saying, well, this is an obvious meaning.
So I think when we interpret the Bible, what we've got to do is really get a sense of having a method to it and a way we go about the process. How do you think you would go about interpreting the Bible? What would you do to get as close as you can to an accurate interpretation?
Well, you want to learn Greek?
Well, that might be a good start, eh?
Hebrew.
Yeah, Greek and Hebrew. But given that we can't do that in the next 5 minutes, what are we going to do?
You have to find someone you trust to interpret.
Pray.
Pray. Thank you, Brad. Find someone you trust. So you're looking for a commentary, and one that you think is reasonably authoritative, to give you some sense of perhaps what the text is saying.
I don't know if it's a translation like this, you could just try to figure out yourself with the context.
Yes. So that's a good one, Elise. So you look at, we looked at one story in John. You look at not just that story, but you look at the chapter before and the chapter after. Yeah. So we've read the second chapter of John. We look at the first chapter and see what the context is, and then we look at the third chapter and see what follows. And so we're trying to put it in its context. That's a very, very good way. It's interesting with the book of John. there's one spot, and I can't remember off the top of my head where it is, but there's one spot where Jesus ends one chapter in one place and suddenly he's somewhere else. And then it happens again at the end of that chapter that he's in one place and he's somewhere else. And one of the theories about the Gospel of John is that when it was originally written, they kind of dropped the pages and they got out of order. You see? But for us in the new church, that's actually significant. That the difference between one chapter and the next, it's an important difference. Anyway, just something to add. To go and find it if you want, but put stuff in its context. Okay, it's one of the things you can do. Look at the book as a whole. Right, so not just one chapter either side, but the whole book. What's the intent of the whole book? Things like the title of the book. What's the book mean? Can you get a sense of the purpose with which the book has been written? Okay. Geography. You know, where is it set?
The context of the writer.
Context of the writer. What do you mean particularly? Anything?
As in, maybe learn about the writer and try to determine what he might do and tell us.
Okay, yeah. So, for example, Book of Revelation again, John, I think we referred to last time as being in prison at the time, and was writing a letter to his churches that he wanted to get past the guardsmen, so that people could actually read it. So one theory is it's written in code to allow to do that. Yeah. Who are the key figures in the book? Okay, in the Gospels it's pretty obvious. Jesus is the whole story is about Jesus. But you go back into the Old Testament, and there's lots and lots of different characters there. And so, who's the main character that's being spoken about? You can say God, but that's a bit of a cop out, really. There's lots of people around whom the stories are based, and so all these sorts of things can help you get into a story. Look on the very last page. Look, last couple. We've just had a look at images from John chapter 2, and what I've done is I've pulled out passages from the Word which talk about the third day, which talk about the wedding, which talk about water, which talk about wine. So all of these things, if you read them, these are where these have occurred elsewhere in the Bible, and these can give you clues as to what these things mean in the story that we just read. Okay, and then I've listed some other images. So you'll notice the 2 or 3 metrites, the stone washing jars are there. The fact that they're there for ceremonial washing, there was actually pinpointed that these things are actually for ceremonial cleansing. The fact that they were filled to the brim. All of these are important details to bear in mind when you're trying to come to understand the story.
Having said that, can I just say,
Yeah.
If you ended up having wine in a ceremonial washing jar, wouldn't that then ruin the jar for ceremonial purposes?
It may well.
Maybe it would bless it.
I don't know.
Or maybe that's makes it a different meaning, making the old ceremony into the new spiritual order or something.
Yeah, possibly so.
I don't know.
So all things to think about when you're trying to understand these. So I've got some other methods of seeking interpretation there. And look, I've put homework. I've suggested that we all try and do a 5-minute presentation on a Bible passage, but I think I'm going to can that for next time. Unless anybody desperately wants to do a 5-minute presentation on a Bible passage. No, didn't think so. But look, there's a list of things you could look at when you're trying to start to get into a Bible passage. All right. What I suggest maybe we do next time is we actually bring our Bible passages and we actually look at some of them in detail. Does that seem reasonable? And then we'll also have it open for questions and comments, things that you might have thought of in the last couple of weeks.
Okay.
Okay. So, as I say, read it all, but take the homework instruction as with a pinch of salt. We'll look at this sort of stuff next time. Bring your passages with you, definitely, and we'll have a go at trying to come to understand some of these. Okay. Alrighty, time to go. See you, mate. See you, Brad. Hope your excursion goes well.
Thanks, and thanks everyone for tonight.
No worries. Catch you later. Turn that off.
Where's Brad? Bathurst or Warner? Bathurst?
There you go.